Now, from the Columbia Basin, your local news source, this is iFIBER One News, presented in high definition. The #1 source for real-time local news, local sports headlines, and our very own Weather Center forecast covering the entire Columbia Basin. With your iFIBER One News team, reporting news in real time as it's happening. From the iFIBER Communications HD broadcast studio in Ephrata, Washington, this is iFIBER One News, and it starts now.
Welcome to iFIBER One News. I'm Alan Troop reporting news from around the Columbia Basin for Wednesday, August 7th. Tonight, we report on the identity of a body found in the Columbia River a year ago and the results of the primary election. We also look at how fire damaged the Moses Lake business, and we find out more about all of the smoke floating around the Columbia Basin. In sports, we catch up with the Mariners and the bad news for two of them. Our spotlight story tonight is about the American Legion passing the gavel in Ephrata. And we have the latest weather forecast for the Columbia Basin from the iFIBER One Weather Center. Our top story tonight. The body found in the Columbia River a year ago was recently identified as Toshio Ota, a 75-year-old man from Seattle. Investigators are ruling his death as a homicide. Ota's body was found floating in the Columbia River about a mile from the Interstate 90 bridge near Vantage on August 25, 2012. The Seattle Police Department helped use dental records and a search through missing persons reports from across the state to identify Ota. Seattle police are assisting with the investigation since he was last seen in Seattle in March of 2011. Grant County Coroner Craig Morrison ruled the death as homicide because of evidence of blunt force trauma to the head. The investigation continues, and the Sheriff's Office asks anyone with any information regarding Ota's death to contact Detective Kyle Cox by phone at 509-754-2011, extension 468, or by email to crimetips@co.grant.wa.us. Two races are being pared down by the primary election, the Cooley City Mayor and a council member for Quincy. In Quincy, Dustin Peterson is leading the race for City Council Member Position 6 with 42% of the vote, which is 185 votes so far. The two top candidates in a primary election continue their bids for office into the general election in November. The candidate placing third is eliminated. The other two candidates for the Quincy Council position are only 5 votes apart. Matt Tate has 131 votes, which is about 30% of the votes, and Keith Paul Anstein has 126 votes, which is about 29%. More ballots are going to be counted. Out of 2,216 voters registered in the 4 voting precincts, only 655 ballots were received on Tuesday. That is 27.3% of the voters. The race for Cooley City Mayor received 157 votes, and Robert Dove is leading the election with 97 votes, which is about 62% of the votes. Richard Heiberg has 44 votes, about 28%, and trailing is Lauren Risting, who has received 16 ballots, which is about 10% of the votes. Fire damaged the building housing Pacific Northwest Mechanical in Moses Lake on Monday night. The Moses Lake Fire Department was called to extinguish the blaze at 1740 West Pheasant Street at 7:50 p.m. Moses Lake Fire Chief Tom Taylor said the damage to the business is pretty significant. Fire investigators are still working to determine what started the fire, but Taylor said they ruled out a suspicious ignition. Pacific Northwest Mechanical is a family-owned business involved in construction and fabrication. The company was started in 2002. Each of the people you see here has warrants for their arrest and is wanted by various law enforcement agencies. If you see any of these people, the DOC asks that you not attempt to detain or apprehend them, but to call police. You can also call the Department of Corrections at 509-764-6180 during the day, or 509-762-1160 after 5 p.m. We will be back after these messages with the latest from our iFIBER One Weather Center, sports, and more news.